Hey everyone, Elizabeth here. The Last Laugh delivers stories that leave you speechless. If you're here for it, hit subscribe and let's go. I'd heard some version of this speech every Christmas for the past 6 years. Sarah's achievements. Sarah's promotions. Sarah's impressive career trajectory at Henderson Retail Management. Today's version came with pie charts Mom had printed out showing Sarah's salary progression from $38,000 to her current $67,000 as assistant manager of a big box store in suburban Cleveland. And she's only 31, Dad added, cutting into his ham. That's real leadership. Real responsibility. Managing 47 employees. 49 now, Sarah corrected, beaming. We hired 2 more for holiday season. Might keep them on. I smiled and passed the green beans to my Uncle Tom. That's great, Sarah. Congrats on the promotion. Thank you, Jamie. She had that tone. The one that said she was graciously accepting acknowledgement from her younger, less successful sibling. Not everyone can handle management. It takes a special skill set. Mom nodded vigorously. Sarah's always been the ambitious one. The driven one. Jamie, sweetie, are you still doing that? What is it you do again? Something with computers? Software engineering, I said for the 800th time. Right. That coding stuff. Dad waved his fork dismissively. But you're not managing anyone, right? Still just doing the technical work. Still doing the technical work, I confirmed. See, that's the difference, Uncle Tom jumped in, settling into lecture mode. He'd made middle management at an insurance company and considered himself a business oracle. Sarah understands that real success means moving into leadership. You can't stay in the trenches forever, Jamie. You're what, 29? 28. Even worse. You should be thinking about your trajectory. Management. Leadership. Those are the markers of real achievement. He gestured at Sarah with his wine glass. Your sister gets it. Sarah tried to look humble and failed. Everyone's path is different. Jamie probably enjoys the technical side. Some people just aren't cut out for the responsibility of leadership. I took a sip of water and said nothing. What would be the point? They didn't know that I held 17 patents in machine learning optimization. They didn't know that 3 of those patents were licensed by major tech companies. They didn't know that I spent the last 4 years developing proprietary algorithms that were revolutionizing data processing efficiency. They thought I was some programmer making maybe $75,000 at a startup, writing code in a basement somewhere. The truth was more complicated. Jamie's just happy doing her thing, Mom said with that sympathetic tone reserved for discussing children who disappointed you. Not everyone needs to be a go-getter like Sarah. My phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And a third time in rapid succession. I ignored it. Christmas Eve dinner with the family was sacred, even if that family spent the entire meal explaining why my sister's retail management career was superior to my apparently invisible tech work. The key is visibility, Sarah continued, warming to her subject. She'd had 3 glasses of wine. In retail, people see your impact. You manage teams, you drive sales, you affect the bottom line directly. That's real, measurable success. Unlike pushing buttons on a computer, Uncle Tom added helpfully. I'm sure Jamie's work is important too, Aunt Linda said, bless her heart. Don't you fix computers or something? I develop software, I said patiently. Right, software. She nodded like I'd said I read tarot cards. That's nice. My laptop, sitting closed on the side table where I'd left it when I arrived, chimed loudly. The notification sound I'd set for priority emails. The one that only activated for messages from my patent attorney, the licensing firm, or my financial advisor. Jamie, honestly, Mom sighed. Can't you disconnect from work for one evening? It's Christmas Eve. Sarah doesn't bring her work to family dinner. Sorry. I started to stand. I'll just silence it. Leave it, Dad said. Whatever it is can wait. We're talking about your sister's achievements. I sat back down. Sarah smiled and launched into a story about inventory management during Black Friday. Everyone listened raptly, as if she were describing battlefield strategy rather than markdown pricing on electronics. My laptop chimed again. Twice. Jamie. Mom's voice had an edge now. I'm not even near it, I pointed out. Well, go turn it off then. This is family time. We're celebrating Sarah's success. I stood up and crossed to the side table. Opened the laptop just enough to dismiss the notifications. The preview text of the most recent email filled the screen. Patent licensing deal finalized. $12.5 million annual royalties. Breakthrough algorithm package license to Techcore Industries. First payment processing January 15th, congratulations. I stared at the screen for 3 full seconds. $12.5 million. Per year. For the next 10 years, with options to extend. My patent attorney, Richard Chen, had been negotiating this deal for 8 months. TechCore Industries, a Fortune 100 company, wanted exclusive rights to my suite of data optimization patents. The algorithms I'd developed were cutting their processing costs by 340% while improving speed and accuracy. I'd told Richard my minimum was $8 million annually. He'd gotten 12.5. Jamie? Sarah's voice pulled me back. We're waiting. Some of us are trying to have a family conversation about actual achievements. I looked at the screen again. Read the number again. $12.5 million. Behind me, the conversation had resumed. Sarah was now explaining her employee retention strategies. Mom was praising her people skills. Dad was comparing her favorably to other retail managers he'd read about. I closed the laptop gently and returned to the table. Everything okay? Aunt Linda asked. Fine. Just work stuff. On Christmas Eve? Uncle Tom shook his head. See, that's the problem with these tech jobs. No boundaries. No respect for personal time. In real management roles, you can disconnect. Sarah nodded sympathetically. I feel bad for you, Jamie. Always on call. Never really off the clock. That's no way to live. It's fine, I said. Is it though? Mom leaned forward, her face full of concern. Honey, you work so hard at this computer thing, but what do you have to show for it? Sarah has a title. She has a team. She has recognition. Mom, I started. I'm just saying, maybe it's time to think about a career change. Something more visible. More concrete. You're still young. You could go back to school, get a business degree. Learn actual management skills like your sister. The table murmured agreement. Sarah tried to look modest and failed spectacularly. My laptop chimed again. For God's sake. Dad's voice boomed. Jamie, either turn that thing off or take it to another room. We're trying to have a nice family dinner. I'll turn it off, I said quietly. I stood up again, crossed back to the side table, and opened the laptop. For new emails, all marked urgent, Richard Chen, patent attorney, call me ASAP. TechCore wants to accelerate timeline. Additional $2 million signing bonus offered. Morgan Financial, advisor, congratulations. Restructuring your portfolio to accommodate new revenue stream. Need to discuss tax optimization ASAP. TechCore Legal, welcome to the TechCore licensing family. Your algorithms will revolutionize our entire data infrastructure. Press release planned for January 3rd. Harvard Innovation Lab, your keynote speech on patenting AI breakthroughs, confirmed for March 15th, $45,000 speaking fee approved. I stood there, laptop open, reading emails about millions of dollars while my family discussed my sister's $4,000 annual raise like it was a Nobel Prize. Jamie. Mom's voice was sharp now. What is so important that you can't give your sister your attention for 5 minutes? I turned around slowly. They were all staring at me. Mom looked annoyed. Dad looked disappointed. Sarah looked smug. Uncle Tom looked judgmental. Aunt Linda just looked confused. Sorry, I said. It's just. I got some news about work. What, did your computer break? Uncle Tom chuckled at his own joke. No. I got an email about a licensing deal. For some patents I hold. The table went quiet for a beat. Patents? Dad said. You have patents? 17, actually. In machine learning and data optimization. Sarah's smile flickered. That's nice. I'm sure that's a fun hobby. It's not a hobby. It's my work. I develop algorithms, mathematical processes that make computers work more efficiently. Tech companies license them. How much do you make from that? Uncle Tom asked bluntly. I hesitated. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew what was coming. Jamie? Mom prompted. How much are we talking? A few thousand? The deal that just finalized is for $12.5 million per year. For 10 years. You could have heard a pin drop. Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Dad set down his wine glass carefully, as if afraid he might drop it. 12. Uncle Tom couldn't finish the sentence. Million, I confirmed. Per year. Plus a $2 million signing bonus. First payment processes January 15th. That's not possible, Sarah said flatly. You're a programmer. I'm a software engineer who specializes in AI optimization. I have a PhD in computer science from MIT. I develop and patent breakthrough algorithms. Companies pay to use them. MIT? Mom whispered. You went to MIT? Full scholarship. Graduated 6 years ago. You didn't come to the ceremony because Sarah had a regional manager interview that weekend. I could see Mom trying to remember, her face cycling through confusion and dawning horror. But you never said. Dad started. I did say. Multiple times. You weren't listening. You were too busy talking about Sarah's achievements in retail management. Sarah had gone pale. 12.5 million that's not real. My laptop chimed again. That'll be either my patent attorney or my financial advisor, I said conversationally. They've been trying to reach me all evening. TechCore Industries, it's a Fortune 100 company, wants to accelerate the contract timeline. Something about their Q1 implementation schedule. I walked back to the laptop and turned it around so they could see the screen. Uncle Tom leaned forward, squinting at the screen. That's real? Very real. Richard's been negotiating it for 8 months. I was hoping for 8 million annually. He got 12.5 per year, Aunt Linda said faintly. For 10 years. Plus options to extend. And TechCore wants to license 3 more patents I'm developing. Richard thinks we can get another 8 to 10 million annually for those. The silence was deafening. Sarah's face had gone from pale to red. But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive a Honda. You wear jeans and t-shirts. The apartment is in Cambridge, walking distance from MIT. It's paid off. Worth about $900,000. I drive a Honda because I like it, it's reliable. I wear jeans because I work from home most days. I paused. Also, I own 3 rental properties in Boston that generate about $180,000 a year in passive income. But that's separate from the patent royalties. 3 properties, Dad repeated numbly. Well, for now. I bought a vacation house in Vermont last year. My total net worth before this new deal was approximately $4.2 million. After the licensing payments, it'll be significantly higher. Mom's hand shook as she reached for her water glass. Why didn't you tell us? I tried. 6 years ago, I told you about my first patent. Dad said, that's nice, but when are you going to get a real job? 4 years ago, I mentioned my first licensing deal. You changed the subject to Sarah's promotion to shift supervisor. I kept my voice level. 3 years ago, I invited you to an award ceremony where I received the MIT Innovation Prize. You said you couldn't come because Sarah needed help moving apartments. We didn't know it was important, Mom whispered. You didn't ask. You assumed that because I work in tech and don't manage a retail team, my career isn't real. I looked at Sarah. You said tonight that my work isn't visible. Isn't concrete. But my algorithms process data for 17 million people every single day. They're in hospital systems, financial software, climate modeling programs. They save lives. They prevent fraud. They help predict natural disasters. Sarah couldn't meet my eyes. But sure, I continued. Managing markdown schedules at a big box store is definitely the more impressive achievement. Jamie, Uncle Tom started. No. I cut him off. You spent this entire dinner explaining to me how I needed to be more like Sarah. How I needed real achievements. How I should go back to school and learn actual management skills. I closed my laptop. I have a PhD from one of the best universities in the world. I've published 14 papers in peer-reviewed journals. I've keynoted at international tech conferences in 6 countries. Harvard's Innovation Lab invited me to speak in March. The speaking fee is $45,000 for 1 hour. Aunt Linda made a small sound. But you all thought I fixed computers for a living. Because you never bothered to ask. You never bothered to Google my name, you'd find my publications, my patents, articles about my work. I picked up my bag. You just decided Sarah was the successful one because her job is something you understand. Wait, Sarah's voice cracked. I didn't know. I know you didn't. Because you weren't interested. None of you were. I looked around the table. Do you know what was the most painful part of tonight? Not the dismissive comments about my career. Not the lecture about needing to be more like Sarah. It was watching Mom present those pie charts showing Sarah's salary progression like it was the greatest achievement in family history. Your sister worked hard, Dad started. So did I. My voice rose for the first time. I worked my ass off for 10 years. I got a full scholarship to MIT. I earned a PhD by 24. I published groundbreaking research. I developed algorithms that are literally changing industries. And you couldn't be bothered to learn what I actually do for a living. The room was silent except for the sound of someone's heavy breathing. I thought it might be Sarah. How much do you make? Uncle Tom asked hoarsely. Total. Per year. Before this deal? About $850,000 from existing patent royalties, consulting work, speaking fees, and rental income. After this deal? Over $13 million annually for the next 10 years, assuming no new patents. But I have 7 more in development. Mom's face had crumpled. She was crying silently. I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad, I said more gently. I'm telling you because you need to understand that your definition of success is incredibly narrow. Sarah's promotion is great. It's real. It matters to her. But my work matters too. It's just as real. Just as valid. We're sorry, Dad said, and his voice shook. Jamie, we're so sorry. We had no idea. That's the problem. You had no idea because you never asked. You never showed interest. You just assumed. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. Richard Chen, call me when you can. TechCore wants to set up a meeting. They're talking about potential advisory board position. $500,000 annual stipend plus equity. I looked up at my family. At their shocked faces. At Sarah, who looked like she might be sick. At Mom, who was still crying. At Dad, who seemed to have aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I need to take this call, I said quietly. It's about the advisory board position TechCore just offered. $500,000 a year plus stock options. I walked out of the dining room into the kitchen, pressing dial on Richard's number. Behind me, I heard Uncle Tom say, "Did she just say $500,000 for a board position?" And Sarah, voice breaking, "I make $67,000 a year. Total." And I thought I was doing so well. 3 hours later, I was in my car preparing to drive back to Cambridge when Mom came outside. Her eyes were red from crying. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Please?" I unlocked the passenger door. She climbed in. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "Jamie, I'm so sorry. We were terrible to you tonight. We've been terrible to you for years." "Yeah," I said simply. "I found your name online. The MIT page. Your publications. The patent listings." Her voice cracked. "You developed the algorithm that improved cancer screening accuracy by 40%. You made software that helps predict earthquakes. You're brilliant. And we treated you like you were nothing." "You treated me like I was less than Sarah," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Sarah's upstairs crying. She keeps saying she didn't know. That she thought you were just some programmer making okay money." "I am just some programmer, Mom. That's my job. I write code. I develop algorithms. The fact that I'm successful at it doesn't change what it is. But 12.5 million is just a number. It doesn't make my work more valuable than it was last week when you thought I made $70,000 a year." I looked at her. "That's what hurt. Not that you underestimated my salary. That you genuinely believed Sarah's retail management career was more impressive than my tech work, regardless of money." Mom wiped her eyes. "You're right. We did. Because we understand her job and we don't understand yours. You never tried to understand mine." I know. She took a shaky breath. "Can you forgive us?" "Eventually. But not tonight. Tonight I'm angry. I'm hurt. And I'm tired of being dismissed by the people who are supposed to be proud of me. We are proud. So proud. We just didn't know you should be." "I know." I started the car. "I need to go, Mom. Richard's waiting for my call, and I have a conference with TechCore's legal team at 8 a.m. tomorrow." "On Christmas?" "Tech doesn't stop for holidays. Especially when there's $125 million on the table over 10 years. She flinched at the number. Will you come back? To visit?" "Yes. But things are different now. You see me differently. I'm not just Jamie the programmer anymore. I'm Jamie who makes millions. And I hate that the money is what finally made you pay attention." "It's not the money," Mom started. "It is, though. If I'd told you tonight I made $100,000 a year from my patents, you'd still think Sarah's career was more impressive. It's the 12.5 million that changed things. The magnitude. The number too big to dismiss." Mom opened her mouth, then closed it. She couldn't argue because we both knew I was right. "I'll call you next week," I said. "We can talk more then. But right now, I need to go handle my apparently very successful career." She nodded and climbed out of the car. Stood in the driveway watching as I backed out. In my rearview mirror, I could see her standing there, small and alone, as I drove away. My phone rang. "Richard Chen. Jamie. Merry Christmas. Sorry to bother you, but TechCore CEO wants to have dinner next week. They're talking about making you their chief innovation advisor. We're looking at potential total compensation over $2 million annually when you factor in everything. Let's talk specifics tomorrow," I said. "Tonight I just want to drive home and process the fact that my family finally knows what I do for a living they didn't know before." Richard sounded shocked. "They thought I was a programmer making maybe $75,000 a year. Jesus. What did they say when they found out?" I thought about Sarah's pale face. Mom's tears. The stunned silence around that table. "The room temperature dropped 20 degrees, I said. And I finally stopped being invisible.